My name is Bonnie B, and you are watching The Power of Perseverance. This is going to be a really fun conversation. I have with me Shawn Wells today, and I read your book, an incredible, incredible book, and I think it's so powerful that you share the journey that brought you to really, I would say, your career path in being a formulator. Is how I would really sum it up. But the book is called The Energy Formula. And Shawn, thank you and welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for reading the book. That's amazing.
This book had a lot of really great chapters. I think it touched not just on nutrition, but I love that you go into our circadian rhythm. I love that you talk about routines. I love that you talk about basically everything to create a very holistic lifestyle. And as I was tapping on a few of the key points in the chapters, it kind of got me thinking, how is it that we get so far away from our natural processes? And I think you sum it up well in your book. It's busy, you work, and you think the more that you work, the more things are going to get figured out. And at the end of the day, you're left feeling really tired. And so what if we were just to channel that back a little bit? So to start off, to give our audience a really good idea of who you are, just share a tad bit about what started you on your wellness journey.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I do feel, before I jump into my story, to your point, I feel that energy is the ultimate currency, right? Like that's ATP is the energy currency in your body, and that's where it starts. And we tend to focus on money, we tend to focus on time and these kinds of things as being like the most important currency in our lives, but it's really energy and who you put yourself around, the things you do that light you up, the foods that nourish your body, the sunshine that you get, the air that you breathe. All of it is so important for giving you more resilience, more life, more energy. So that's why I focus the title of the book and all the chapters around how to live a life with more energy. But going into my story, a lot of my story through most of my life was living a life low on energy because I had a very difficult childhood, difficult past where I went through abuse and bullying, and I overate to compensate with that, and that led into more bullying. At one point, I'm 6'2", 6'3", and I got up to about 300 pounds. And then from all the shame, I went the other direction with anorexia and got to about 150 pounds. And I was just an emaciated skeleton at that point. And never happy with myself. And then after that, I did kind of orthorexia, where I was working out several times a day. I was eating maybe 400 calories a day, but trying to get as much protein as I could. Like it was like starving myself, but eating only protein and working out. And I crashed. I got a six pack and all those things, but I crashed. Working so hard to prove myself, led me to a really sad place where my autoimmune system just shut down, and I was in bed for 6 months. It was tired of getting beat up. It was tired of getting bullied by me. I was gaslighting myself. I was always saying I wasn't good enough. And
I got to stop you right there. That self-talk, like you said, shame and guilt. And even though you had probably gotten away from the bullying that came from other people, you still had those patterns repeating in your own head. And I love that you just brought awareness to that, because I think that's so important as people start to heal their body and become aware. Just making the choice of that awareness to give yourself self-love and kind words.
Oh, so true. Switching from the inner critic to the inner champion was profound for me, but it took a long time to get there. I started getting healthier by adding in supplements, adding in exercise, adding in the diet. Like I was doing keto and I was doing paleo and fasting over 20 years ago to dig myself out of this hole before any of them were really trendy. But Thank God for the internet at that time, because I was just digging into all these different, Reddit and forum groups way back then, um, and finding out all these answers that I was trying, and it got me out of bed. It got me on a path to being healthier physically, but it took me a long time to get healthier mentally. I still, even after I worked through a number of these autoimmune issues and health issues with Epstein-Barr, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, Hashimoto's, and then eventually even a brain tumor, it wasn't until 3.5 years ago that I did psychedelics that I really had a huge shift mentally. Because
You
I was
know,
still working like 80 to 100 hours a week. For the last 20 years, I've been doing that.
um, when you went to do that, was it with a private practitioner and then they kind of like guide you through it? Or was it something that you found because you're a supplementer and you were like, I'm going to try this?
At the time, I thought that all drugs were bad, even though I was using alcohol quite often. And I heard about Tim Ferriss, Dave Asprey, a number of people that I respected doing microdosing, doing journeys, getting all kinds of benefits from them. And so I was doing biohacking basically again for the last 20 years. I
You're
didn't
right.
necessarily call it that, but that's what I was doing. I was orthomolecular dosing, like these supplements. I was trying different compounds that were research compounds or pharmaceuticals, and trying crazy new workout things, and whatever I could do, like that was like kind of on the bleeding edge is what I got interested in. So like this was now trendy, and I wanted to do it before everyone else, and see what it could do for me, because then I could probably get more performance, more hours out of my day. And that's the whole point of like kind of the traditional male version, masculine version of biohacking
You
is,
want to maximize your day every single minute.
yeah, get
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Just
But it
how do
was
I
the
feel?
trends that got you started with your food and with the psychedelics. The trends got you going. And I love that you've taken that trend and you created what worked good for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I actually went into my first journey in a group with amazing facilitators that are still my best friends to this day and still people I rely on heavily, that's when everything shifted. And it sounds like something that could be so simple when I tell you that I realized I could be loved.
Mm.
Um, but until you've anchored that feeling in that kind of space, like it's one of those things that you could tell someone and they're like, uh huh, yep. But I felt it,
Like embody it and really
embodied it.
speak it
Yeah,
to
exactly.
yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
And did that
Exactly. And
come
it
not
like,
just from the bullying, but was that part of like a nurturing that you probably didn't get as well when you were growing up?
yeah, exactly. I always felt like love had to be earned, and love was not unconditional. It was conditional, and then it's fleeting.
Mm.
And so every time I had a big accomplishment and there was praise or accolades, then I would be high for a moment, and then it was all gone. And then I talked to myself and said how I could have done better, what I'm going to do next. There's always the next rung on the ladder, and it's like I would never like enjoy the moment. If I got on Ben Greenfield's show, I'm like, well, you didn't get on Joe Rogan's show. Let's go. You
There's
know, and
always never enough, never enough, never enough.
there's always never enough.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I think
So
that could be like a healthy balance, which is I think is what you were sounds like you were striving for because to never not have that, I think then we wouldn't have anything really to kind of push us. So it's finding that fine balance.
exactly, 100%. And I love what biohacking gave me, and I love what all this drive gave me. I wouldn't be where I am without it. I wouldn't have the achievement that I've accomplished without it. And I did need that balance because I was just pushing too much. I was always in sympathetic nervous system. I was never in parasympathetic, and I was never in that kind of rest and digest. So absolutely, the balance is key.
I would love to touch on what you talk about the fight and flight because you
Hmm.
kept yourself in such a busy mode. And, as I read your book and have gotten to know you a little bit more, I thought it was a huge blessing because I thought I was the only one have busy lifestyle. You're incorporating all these things, but it's never enough. And then you're so relatable when it comes to like how much these over, if you're an athlete, especially you want to achieve, or if you've accomplished, you keep yourself in this fight or flight response. I don't know, for whatever reason. And until we get out of that, it's like this imbalance is created, but it does something for you emotionally and mentally and physically. It really is not a good thing. And it's almost like physical abuse to your body, too.
Very much. Like it's really called hypervigilance. And that was where I was staying, is kind of being vigilant about all the things that could potentially go wrong or happen to me. And so that's where I stayed to protect myself. And so therefore, when you're in this hypervigilant state, you are always in the sympathetic nervous system with fight, flight, or freeze, and you are never in a rested state. And actually, that's another thing that happened when I got into a psychedelic space with psilocybin, is I yawned and I felt relaxed. And I was just kind of laying there like in this cuddle puddle around other
Yeah.
people. And I felt like I could be kind of touched and caressed in a very like childlike kind way. It's not like a sexual at all. And it
It
really
just sounds very nurturing to be in a group
nurturing. Yeah,
or a
exactly.
room with people just
Yeah.
that are also working through. I think it goes
Yeah.
back to the guilt and the shame. We're so ashamed to admit that we have emotions, but really emotions are the language of the subconscious telling us, hey, I need you to take care of me and you're not taking care of me. So to nurture that and to share it, I think would be an incredibly safe space to do it.
Exactly. And feeling all your emotions, that's a great point, is so critical. They're all pertinent. They're
Yeah.
all important. They're all lessons. And all of it is the human experience. We're not supposed to just be happy all the time. We're supposed to acknowledge our emotions, process our emotions, feel our emotions, and then let them go. So exactly, that's a great point.
Those psychedelics, I like that you started talking a lot about them because I think there's so much taboo around them and a lot of fear. And I think that fear really holds people back from experiencing something. Even if it's not psychedelics, you have, other practitioners offering some form of alternative to kind of help that state of mind
Hmm.
be altered. And I think that can be really powerful, especially if we were raised in a societal or cultural place where our beliefs were so heavily embedded by the values that were generational. So to be able to have the opportunity, whether it's supplementation, rest, sleep, I mean, I felt so guilty for as long as I could remember for getting up and exercising and taking care of myself because I'm a mom. And if it didn't look like a certain way that I was taking care of my kids, I really felt bad for being a certain kind of mom. But at the end of the day, if I don't take care of myself, how am I being a better anybody to anybody? So I like that because I think you give people like, when you see one person doing it, then people are like, you know what, I'm like, you saw your mentors, then everyone kind of opens up and goes to try because, well, they didn't, now we're safe. So same thing. I had somebody recommend a psychedelic journey and it was the most incredible eye-opening experience. I had not been nurtured as a little girl. And so to hear you say those things about what that can create, it was almost like I was allowed to cry. I was allowed to be me. And I can't explain what it did physically. Maybe you're able to explain what it does chemically with the brain, but I naturally it made it easier for me to be happy and I was able to let go of that guilt and the shame and the anger that I held on to for so long, which also carried into how I treated myself with words. And then if I treated myself with those words, I wasn't going to eat good because I had abused myself with food. And so it's like, how many of us go through this and we just need more of us talking about it and having these conversations?
Yeah, there's several things that happen during a psychedelic experience. One of which is dissociation, where you kind of leave this realm to some degree, which can be helpful. The suppression of the ego, or turning off default mode network, is kind of another way of putting it. So, like, you're no longer reframing your experience. which is helpful and a great survival technique, especially if you're super successful. You're always reframing things in a way that's like, the world is working for me
Yeah.
and all this, the NLP and power of positive thinking and, the secrets and whatever you want to call it. Like there's that kind of thinking. That's all reframing and that's all like ego constructs. And of course, a lot of us are reframing for the negative, where we're saying like, figures, I'm always getting screwed over. This sucks, that kind of thing. But when your ego is suppressed, you're just getting kind of like the raw, unfiltered truth. And that can be very powerful to come to grips with.
Yeah.
That can really change a lot mentally for you. And then you're also in like a hyper neuroplastic state. So your brain can be remolded, rewired at the same time. BDNF is elevated, brain derived neurotrophic factor. So a number of these things are actually happening that allow you to kind of go into the operating system and make real change. Like if you just go to a psychotherapist, your ego is still working, your default mode network is still up, and it's kind of shifting and preventing and saying, no, this is who we are. We need this. You're not dissociated very well. And you're not in a neuroplastic state. So you really can't make the changes nearly as well when you don't have a psychedelic state, which, as you said, is not necessarily always achieved through psychedelic medicines. Like you can do deep breath work that releases DMT. You can do like a hypnotic type of prayer or meditation. You can spend time in a float tank and do like kind of inward work. But I think most of us are so distracted that it's very difficult to go deeply inward and look around and see all that there is to see. Most of us are wanting to stay out of that realm and just be distracted because there's a lot of work to do if we
There
go
is.
inward.
Would you say that's also how you bring yourself to a flow state? You do talk about that in your book as well, and I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I love the flow state because it's really a combination of the sympathetic and parasympathetic. It's feeling stimulated and relaxed at the same time, which is the ultimate place to be. Like if you think about a painter when they're kind of in their flow and it's just like the painting is already there, or when you hear about someone like molding a statue, right? And they're just like chipping away and they already see it in their head, or Michael Jordan playing basketball or something like that, where it's like it's slowed down and it's like he's playing a different game than everyone else. There's a composer that talked about like the phantom hand syndrome, like where he
Mm.
felt like his hand was like had like a life of its own essentially when he was composing. And he talked about how powerful the flow state is. And it tends to be in this alpha brainwave state that is the flow state. And so that's where we're most productive, obviously. So obviously having hustle is a good thing, but like the old Gary V, like hustle and grind is not an idea that I like because that's sympathetic and ultra sympathetic. And grind means that you're suffering and sacrificing and there's heat and
Right.
pieces breaking off and there's smoke and you're breaking down. Hustle and flow makes sense to me. Sometimes you have to get in your masculine and go get it, right? You got to get in your hustle. And then the whole point is to get into like your balance state ultimately, like which is the feminine and masculine, the yin and the yang, where it's like you feel whole, you feel stimulated, and you feel relaxed. And this is where like the kind of the ultimate wholeness of who you are is achieved, is in masculine and feminine energy.
I think people confuse masculine and feminine to be so male and female when really it's
Yeah.
just this beautiful dance. I, in my opinion, I think that a woman's more natural power is to be more relaxed and
Yeah,
intuitive,
a
and the
healer.
male is more driven, and that's why we have like the male working and the mother at home and all these different ways of defining it. But
Yeah,
I love the dance of it when you,
yeah.
especially if you have a partnership or a spouse and you guys help bring that to each other, it can be a beautiful thing. And then when you relate that now to the body and the psyche, that's kind of cool.
Exactly. And I'll be the first to tell you that like this hyper masculinized work world like is what
Yeah.
can break you down. All this achievement and what do you do? Like the first thing a man gets asked is like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? It's kind of like, what do you bench? Or like,
Yeah.
that kind of
Let's
thing.
hit your ego and find out where, like, your bench, your chest muscles have everything to do with your overall body health.
Right. So and even biohacking was very masculinized at the beginning. You had
Mm,
all these men that were kind of leading in that space, and it's about like injections and drinking your own urine or like crazy stuff that it's like, what? But the more extreme it was, the more people were like, "Oh wow, like that's really interesting. I want to explore this because I could get more productivity and I could be a better man or whatever." And it really wasn't until like the idea of like optimization came in and kind of a more balanced approach and more feminine energy came in that we got more healing and we started thinking about human optimization versus biohacking, and we started talking about some of these ancient practices of meditation, of breath work, of journaling, of grounding, these things that are healing that I consider more feminine energy. And certainly when I got into the psychedelic space, there was a lot of healing, nurturing, feminine energy that I needed. And I spent many years actually in that space kind of recalibrating from my ultra masculine energy that was wounded, heavily wounded, to now learning how to be in this healing and nurturing space, how to get into my feminine. And that allowed me to become in my king energy, my healed energy as a man, of creating a safe space for myself and for others to be like a true protector, provider, and not pulling people into a wounded masculine where I was being manipulative or projecting my hurt onto others.
that's interesting. Um, through your experiences, I bet having that awareness really tremendously helped the relationships that you were in, friendships, partnerships, family ships.
Massive, like incredibly massive, because again, when you can like provide that container for
Yeah.
the feminine to dance, to play, to heal, to do all the things that the feminine energy does, create. I mean, it's why we talk about like Mother Earth, or we talk about the forces of creation, like in the universe being feminine. Like uh, it's it's like every bit as important, right? Like it
So
is the count,
important.
the balance, right?
I've experienced most of my life living in both energies. I was
Mhm.
very disconnected with my mother, my father, and then into my former marriage. I still carried both those energies. So now I get to practice moving forward what it's like to have a partner show up for me in that masculine. And it's been really incredible to feel truly what it's like to experience a feminine energy and not have to carry both. It's different, but it's been really fun.
It's important that we can get into both, but I have definitely seen what you're talking about, like where it's on both sides, like where I've been with a partner and she was very driven most of her life and had to
Yeah.
be in the work world and had to be the leader and had to be tough and had to
Yeah.
stay in masculine energy. And for her to relax into the
Yeah.
relationship and just be in her feminine, I could just see so much relief on her. And then likewise, she learned through that to empower me and lift me up and treat me like I'm her superhero, which is what every man needs. If you treat a man like he's the protector, the provider, a superhero like Marvel or whatever,
Well, that's what we want. We
and
really do want that
we want that.
superhero.
And then if you treat the woman Like
Yeah.
she is so beautiful, like she's the creator of great things in your life, the nurturer, the protector of your children. And if you treat her that she is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, and you tell the man he's the most powerful, strong thing you've ever seen, you're going to have a happy relationship.
I totally agree. And letting go of all your judgments, you
Hmm.
know, I think healing, to define it in one sentence, healing, you know, I know this is going a little bit more into the relationship side, but I think it correlates so much to our overall health and well being because it feeds in. If you have a healthy relationship, your food's healthy, your lifestyle's healthy, everything just feels better. Um,
Actually, take that one more level. So I talk about this in the book, like, and this goes back to what I said about anchoring with regards to psychedelics and me anchoring in that I could be loved. So if I am someone that's eating McDonald's every day,
yeah,
but I am someone that's so happy, feels so loved, it's potentially possible that McDonald's food could anchor oxytocin
a
and
happiness.
feelings of well-being and all this. And vice versa. You could be eating the healthiest food possible. You could be eating your celery, salmon,
Yeah,
whatever it is, but if you're around abuse and yelling and this kind of relationship, then that could trigger inflammation and a number of things in your body, epinephrine and cortisol, all these things like that. So you could be anchoring things to what you think is healthy, but it could be triggers to be unhealthy in your body because your body, it connects these neurons to whatever, it's like Pavlovian, right? So that
mhm,
you start connecting this food that you're eating with this negative outcome. So in time, your body can start triggering inflammation, or it can start triggering a reduction in inflammation and feelings of well-being, depending on what you're doing. So always think about these anchors, like what's around you, what's happening, what are my behaviors, how can I change this? All those things are very important.
I think that's really key too, because often we think if it looks, tastes, feels a certain way, right? Just like, if you have a big house, a luxury car, then you automatically are happy, but that doesn't necessarily equal happiness. Um, I when I left my situation, I had a tremendous amount of stress. And what helped aid that in my process is I came across the exogenous ketone. I was eating a clean lifestyle. I was eating so perfectly 6 days a week and, like the typical one cheat a week. I exercised. I did all the things except for took care of my emotional health. And what I found really helped that was I started taking exogenous ketones because I'd heard about how they help connect this gut brain thing. And I was like, well, what do I have to lose? I've tried everything. And being in the supplement industry and reading how you had done researched all these supplements, I thought there's got to be something to it. So I had started to do intermittent fasting. And back then, with a bodybuilding diet, you think of keto being like low carb, but really, what I was doing is I didn't realize it at the time as I've started to read more of the research and to understand it deeper was I was helping my body with those exogenous ketones. Um, how do I want to say it was connecting something back in my brain that I hadn't had when I was coming out of fight or flight.
Yes, yes. And ketones, absolutely. Not only are they a substrate for energy, but they are more important a signal for a number of things in the body. We do know that, and actually part of my psychedelic protocol that I've developed with a ton of supplements for pre, peri, post psychedelic experiences, I actually do have C8-MCTs, exogenous ketones, dihydroberberine, because your brain is in this neuroplastic state that we talked about. And there is a potential for great healing of the brain. And we do know that for millennia on these psychedelic experiences, fasting was an important part of this. So, what happens during fasting, but our ketones are elevated. And when you're in the psychedelic space, you can heal the brain. So, you can have the potential, and it's been shown with exogenous ketones or endogenous ketones, that they can heal traumatic brain injury, that they can reduce neuroinflammation, that they improve the energetics of the brain. The brain actually prefers ketones over glucose. So all of that's really cool. But absolutely, same with me when I started doing the ketogenic diet, when I started doing fasting. I felt like someone had turned the lights on, because with a lot of autoimmune conditions, you are insulin resistant, glucose intolerant, and 87% of the US population is metabolically dysfunctional. So, for so many people, when you get on a ketogenic diet, when you do fasting, when you use exogenous ketones, when you use something like metformin or berberine, dihydroberberine, like a glucose disposal agent, um, you experience like someone's like turning the lights on in your brain. You're now able to get more of that energy.
into your
The,
brain.
yeah, in the brain we call it uh, it's well is in the body this is ice, so insufficient cellular energy, and in the brain it's called brain energy gap. So both of these terms are essentially the same thing, where there's a shortfall of energy, and in time this is where you become dependent on more sugar and dependent on
Yeah.
caffeine, and you don't have enough energy for what you need to accomplish. And then that's going to lead to inflammation, glycation, oxidation, damage of the tissues, and then exhaustion. And then that will lead into autoimmune issues and disease states.
I like berberine. You mentioned berberine, and I have taken that, and I found that to be super beneficial. And combining it with my ketones and the MCTs, all really important ingredients. I think people can get stuck on one ingredient, but if you synergistically can combine them perfectly, I really think you can create a formula that works very well for your body. Because what I'm hearing you say is, that as our body heals, some of these things can change. But I'm curious, because when we're talking about ketones being a macronutrient, would you say it's macronutrient compared to all of these? And then when you're formulating it, you would call them micros or fillers, or how would you describe that?
Well, ketones are a macronutrient in terms of there's caloric value and nutrition present. So, like, fat, protein, um,
Carbs.
carbs, and then, yes, ketones are all macronutrients. And then your micronutrients would be the vitamins and minerals and things like that. Um, and then, of course, you just have things that are have nutritional value but aren't necessarily nutrients, like berberine, like you mentioned. I would encourage you to try dihydroberberine. That's something I
Okay.
patented.
Oh,
So,
patents. So why did you decide? I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was my next question, and I'm interrupting you because I only get you
okay.
for so much time. But how did you decide, and what makes you decide on any ingredient why you're going to patent it? Because I think that's important for people to understand when they hear this. Oh, it's a patented ingredient. Well, it's actually really important that you know that.
Yeah, and you guys have tons of patents when it comes
Oh,
to
yeah.
ketones. Um, I've filed probably over 100 patents in my career. One of my newest ingredients, we have 23 patents alone on paraxanthine, this metabolite of caffeine, really clean energy. But dihydroberberine, we saw uniqueness in that there was a problem with berberine having GI distress,
Okay.
having big doses needed, 500
Yep.
milligrams 3 times a day. So that's 1,500 milligrams. Um, we were finding that there's a lot of bio individuality at the gut level that was leading to this GI distress, but also leading to the differing levels of plasma berberine and how well it was converted and absorbed. So at the gut level, it actually converts to dihydroberberine. And then at the plasma level, it converts back to berberine. So my idea was, what if we skip this step that has a lot of GI distress, bioindividuality, and maybe we could actually get away with lower doses? And sure enough, what we found is with dihydroberberine, you only need to give 200 milligrams twice a day. So you're talking about 400 milligrams versus a total of 1,500 milligrams. So berberine you have to take more often, much bigger doses, the GI distress, the bioindividuality, and dihydroberberine, lower doses, no GI distress, works much better, lasts longer in the plasma, higher bioavailability, and seems to be pretty consistent in its impact across pretty much everyone that uses it. So,
But you patent it, which I think is important because, like, when I'm looking at just any ingredient, not just our exogenous ketone, and I'm thinking, okay, it says it's patented. What does that even mean? Before I was in the supplement industry, truly, I think it says credibility that you have put uh, around your product, yours specifically, or anyone's, that you have done the research and you didn't just go buy it from an ingredient person and now you're selling it. That you put the the value, you're protecting the value around it.
so I've brought maybe 25 ingredients to market, and each one costs anywhere from $1 million to $5 million and is 2 to 5 years of work before it's commercially ready.
Wow.
So you're talking about a big investment. And when you're investing that kind of money and
Yeah.
time, you definitely want to protect your work. And so there's different patents. You have synthesis patents, which is like how you make the ingredient. Did you use some kind of unique technique to make the ingredient? There's compositional patents, which is where you're combining different things and you're getting something that isn't additive but synergistic, that's unexpected. And then you have to show that with data. And then lastly, there's use patents, which is something that hasn't been demonstrated. As always, this is you have to show that this has not been demonstrated or is not known or expected. And that's really important with patent filing. You can go back and forth, by the way, with a patent examiner for 10 years. There's patents that literally can take 10 years of being locked up before a final decision is made. So this is a long process, and a lot of times you have patents pending. When you do get awarded the patent, you can always go back to the date that you filed and then pursue legal paths if you need to with people that have infringed on your patents.
But I think
Uh,
it's important, like if you, like you said, if you're
mhm.
putting in the work and you're bringing something in the research, it makes it that much more important to protect what you've done because you understand it. And I think that's important for consumers to understand, is to be mindful of the ingredients, because there are so many supplements out there and people, I mean, it's like your work led you into finding the best supplements. You wanted to find the most bioavailable and the most efficacious, and you put a lot of heart into what you were doing. I think that's important.
Exactly. It's when you put that kind of work and money into these things, and literally we had hundreds of people working on them. You really do need to protect that. Otherwise, the drive or impetus isn't there to
Yeah.
research these things unless they can be protected. And so I love the idea of filing patents because there's so much data that comes from that, and I want to make sure that people that are doing that kind of work, that I am paying them and letting them know I appreciate the work that you've done, the intellectual property that you have worked on. And so I love buying branded ingredients where the quality is assured and that the research is there. And I know Ketone Labs does a great job at that.
What would you say was the most powerful ingredient as you were going through your healing journey that helped you the most? I know
So,
that's like such a broad
wait, are we
question.
talking about like supplements or are we talking about psychedelics?
Outside of psychedelics, I'm talking about, okay, for example, these diet trends. Here's a good one. The juicing. People, you've got the person out there that's doing celery juice every day, and that is the only way they know how to heal is celery juice. So they jump on this path and they're healing with celery juice and certain supplementation. And for them, they believe that celery juice healed them, right? Just like for me, a big part of my healing was the exogenous ketone. I went to my owners and I was like, I don't think you understand like how powerful this like what this has done for me. And I showed them my pictures. And a lot of people don't really know that that's what I did. And I was like, you need to give me a job and I'm going to start educating people. Because what I hate in most industries is false information and people not being true and authentic to who they really are and trying to sell you on something that's not valuable. So I was like, all right, I'm going to learn everything there is about it because you've changed my life. So for you and your journey, was there one thing that really stuck out to you in part of that healing?
Yeah, let me think. I would say that the maybe the most powerful ingredient I actually do think is dihydroberberine. Um, Glycation, oxidation, inflammation are the major ways that you're aging, and you're protecting against all of those. It's literally the ingredient that I've told people is the most important. Like metformin is one of the most powerful anti-aging ingredients. It's been used for over 20 years. It does have some side effects. It is a drug, but there's a study going on right now with over 10,000 people looking at metformin in healthy blood sugar levels. So these are people that are non-diabetic and they're seeing anti-aging benefits, and they're going to prove that on a massive level with 10,000 people. Berberine outperformed metformin in a head-to-head study. Dihydroberberine dramatically outperforms berberine. So extrapolating that, I would assume it potentially outperforms metformin. So this is like the most powerful anti-aging compound that I can think of. Plus, you have the effect on advanced glycation end products, which is a major method of aging that this is protecting against. It's also been shown to reduce oxidative stress, which is another method of aging. It's been shown to have an impact on mitochondrial biogenesis, and mitochondrial dysfunction is another way that we age. Inflammation, it's been shown to reduce that and also improve lipids, which is another method of aging. So
So
it's
that
really the
compared
most
to
powerful compound.
ketones, would
Yeah.
you say, what would you say those are? Because you compared it to metformin. To me, if I
Mm-hmm.
took all three, that sounds like the most powerful anti-aging ever.
100%.
But if you were to line
100%.
all three of those up,
Yeah, no, I love the idea of actually taking all three. And I mentioned that in my protocol with psychedelics that you even
yeah,
also do you do fasting, but either intermittent or extended. You do the ketogenic diet, and I like getting sub 20 grams, especially if you're a woman. I do believe the ketogenic diet can be harder for a woman, especially if she's
the
sedentary and
hormones.
has less muscle mass.
Yeah,
Muscle mass is a great equalizer when it comes to blood glucose. This is why I've been around bodybuilders, like very
yeah.
large, genetically enhanced bodybuilders, that they're able to maintain a ketosis at 150 grams of carbs a day. You know,
I agree with that. If you're
and
really on your
and I've been
program.
around and I've been around sedentary women that don't have much muscle mass that need to be sub 20 grams. And so, I would start with a very low carb, not net carb, just low carb, sub 20 gram ketogenic diet and see where that gets you, because I think a lot of people think they've been in ketosis and haven't. But beyond that, I would, yeah, certainly add the C8 MCTs. I love exogenous ketones, especially the active isomer, the D or the R. And then also the glycogen depletive exercise. So doing like high intensity interval training, that would be a great way to clear out glycogen and glucose. Like maybe if you're doing a cyclical ketogenic diet, like when you're heading back into your ketogenic dieting, let's say, Sunday night or Monday morning, that you do like hit high intensity interval training and deplete that glycogen. So
You
those are
talked
all
about
things.
these isomers. Are those isomers or what you're saying? Like most people go on the ketogenic diet for so many benefits, but they experience clarity and these signaling agents in there. Are you saying that these isomers are the signaling agents that get carried up there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is. We know that there is more data to come on what would be like racemic or kind of mixed isomer, which is like the D and the L or the R and the S. They're synonymous. So, like the
Yeah.
D is the same as the R, the L is the same as the S. So, you can refer to it either way. And a lot of research kind of goes back and forth. But we can just say the D and the L in this case. And DBHB, we know seems to have more of an impact on a substrate level, like where you're reducing appetite, where your brain feels kind of uplifted. What we're not really sure about is maybe the other isomer might have some impact on a signaling level in a different way, and we're not sure. Like this does happen in a number of compounds that I've researched. Where, like for example, there's one that I've worked on called BEBA,
Ooh,
which is actually
L beta or beta?
yeah. So yeah, exactly. L-BEBA is the one that I brought to the market, and that's actually very similar to um, butyrate, and which is part of beta hydroxybutyrate, which you could go into a whole chemical discussion here. But
Right.
anyway, beta amino isobutyric acid. And BEBA is a signal that your body releases when it's intensely exercising. It's called a myokine. When it breaks down your BCAA muscle pool of aminos and it takes valine and converts that into BEBA. And then your body is saying, oh, wow, we're intensely exercising because it sees BEBA. And then it starts making all these changes, like with VO2 max and endurance, skeletal muscle, hypertrophy and improved strength, muscle innervation, um, neuroplasticity, all the things that we associate with exercise, it's actually doing in relation to BEBA being elevated. But I've been doing research there too. And while L-BEBA seems to be the main signal, that the other isomer may have other signaling that it's doing as well. So like this does happen. So there's a lot to kind of continue to research. I think L-BETA is the most important. I think DBHB is the most important, but there is certainly some potential with mixed isomers.
What I think is really cool is through consistency, you become adaptable and adaptability. And being able to do that, if you're really serious about living a very high quality of life, it's really just getting into your body and feeling that. I think what's important for any brand or manufacturer listening to this podcast is to know how important it is to really get educated on your ingredients, because you could formulate something really powerful by just understanding deeper and not just going, you know what, this sounds like a popular ingredient, let's just go for it, but really understanding what's going on around it. And you have a company that does that called Zone Halo. So for
Yeah.
any brand looking to formulate and have meaningful, powerful ingredients that from somebody that really understands the genre of them, I would say probably to look into Zone Halo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're over 1,000 products in at this point. I've flavored over 300 products, RTDs, foodstuffs, like including protein cookies and brownies and
Hey,
all kinds
that's
of
my
things like
jam. I'm a protein cookie
that.
girl.
Yeah, and we've actually been a part of 11 merger and acquisitions in the space, including Dymatize and BioTrust, and a number of companies on that front. So we do a lot of strategic work, but we do things front to back. So we do quality control if you need that, adverse event reporting. We do third party logistics and shipping. We do packaging, labels, regulatory. We literally do everything that you could possibly need with my company. So yeah,
Do they get to work with you directly if they go through Zone Halo?
yes, yep. I am the CEO, and you'll be working with me directly and my team, of course.
Shawn, I want to have you on again. This is just like scratching the surface of everything that's out there. But I can't. It has to come to an end eventually. But we've got so many powerful resources I'm going to share with everybody that listens and post to the social media platforms. And everybody can find you on Shawn Wells, on his Facebook, his Instagram, and I'll put the resources out there. to sum up our beautiful conversation, what would you say in one sentence you would define maybe, oh, not your journey, but in one word or not one word, one sentence, what is it mean to have a meaningful life and to be an elite performer?
Hmm. To have passion and purpose, there's there's nothing greater. There is really nothing greater than that. To live every day with that energy, with that fire burning fully. You need to be whole in yourself. You need to surround yourself with the right people. You need to choose a significant other in your life if that's your pursuit, that adds to your well-being, adds to your energy. But to know what it is that lights you up, that's the purpose. That's why you're here. That's the lesson. Find what lights you up, and your life will forever be changed. And chase that fully. Do not settle. Do not be complacent. Chase what lights you up. Find that fire within.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please share it and help us keep the conversation going. We can't grow without you. So, thank you in advance for your support of Power of Perseverance.